Welcome to the Reddit mic.
So today we're jumping into a fascinating little story from the internet.
Yeah, it starts with this dog behavior puzzle, but where it ends up is, well, pretty surprising.
Exactly. And our source material for this one, it's a great post from our Best of Redditor updates, the place where they follow up on stories.
Right, so you get the whole picture, we've got the original post, loads of comments from the community, and crucially, the update.
And the title that got everyone's attention was something like, help dog suddenly very attached to wife and won't leave her alone.
Yeah. So our mission today really is to unpack what was happening with this dog, Otis.
See what the Reddit community thought, which was pretty insightful as it turns out.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And maybe figure out what this tells us about that, that connection between us and our pets, the communication that happens without words.
Okay, let's get into it. Let's unpack this Otis story.
All right, so Otis. He's a 3-year-old pit bull mix, adopted.
And the OP, the person who wrote the post, describes him as, well, usually just a big softie, right? A snuggly goofball.
Totally. Loves his humans, especially the wife. She's like his person.
Yeah.
But importantly, the OP makes it clear they've put a lot of work into training him, making sure he's well behaved.
Right. Partly because of, well, the breed stereotype some people have. Pit bull, docked ears and tail. They wanted to be extra careful.
Exactly. So this behavior we're about to talk about, it was really, really out of character for him, not his normal personality at all.
Okay, so what happened? When did this start?
It kicked off about a week or two before the original post, and it lined up with the wife having like a stomach bug. She was feeling pretty nauseous, sick for about a week.
Oh, okay. So maybe just being protective because she was unwell?
Well, that's what they thought at first. The OP even mentioned Otis is usually pretty tuned into her emotions.
Oh, really?
Yeah, apparently he once gave the OP daggers just for, having a fight with the wife.
Huh. Okay, so he's observant.
Very. So, yeah, the extra clinginess while she was sick seemed kind of sweet initially. Like, oh, he knows she's feeling rough.
Makes sense. But the weird part was it didn't stop when she got better.
Exactly. That's the puzzle. She started feeling fine, but Otis just cranked the attachment up. The OP said he took it to another level.
To another level, so not just hanging around nearby anymore.
No, this was like intense, constant closeness, crying outside the bathroom door.
Oh, wow.
Moping dramatically by the front door when she went to work. And the second she got home, he just had to be draped over her. Constantly.
Okay, I can picture that. Part adorable, part maybe a little much.
That's exactly how the OP put it. Half annoying, half cute. A big dog just flopped on you 24/7.
Yeah. Sweet, but maybe getting a bit old. But then things took a more serious turn, right?
It did. The incident that really shifted their concern from, this is kind of weird, to, okay, maybe something's actually wrong happened at the park.
The park incident, right. What went down there?
So they're at the park, and another dog, off-leash, runs up to the wife, just approaching her.
Okay.
And Otis, this usually gentle, well-trained dog, he suddenly bares his teeth and growls at the other dog.
Whoa. And he'd never done that before.
Never. The OP was very clear on that. Zero history of aggression like that. So it's a huge red flag for them.
Yeah, that's definitely alarming. Going from super snuggler to sudden aggression, that would worry me too.
Absolutely. It immediately made them think, okay, is this becoming a real aggression issue? Is he resource guarding her? They knew they had to figure it out.
So what was their next step? Vet, I assume?
Sensible move, yeah. Their plan was to call the vet first thing Monday, rule out any physical cause, like maybe he was in pain or something.
Makes sense. Pain can definitely trigger weird behaviors in dogs.
For sure. But before they even got that far, the internet stepped in, specifically the Reddit community.
Reddit. Always has an opinion.
And this time, it was spot on. Almost immediately after the post went up, one of the very first comments asked this, simple question. Any chance your wife is pregnant?
No way. Just like that.
Just like that. And the OP's reply was just classic. First, a stunned, oh shit.
I can just imagine.
Right. And then later, they added this funny comment maybe Otis should parent the kid too, since he's clearly more switched on than either of our dumbasses are.
That's hilarious. Mm-hmm. That sudden dawning realization moment. You could almost hear the gears turning.
Totally. And the OP did add an edit saying they had actually been trying to conceive.
Oh, okay.
Which is why they felt kind of silly for not thinking of it themselves. They were trying not to get their hopes up, I guess.
Still, the idea that the dog and then random strangers online knew before they did, That's pretty wild.
It really is. And then fast forward about a month, the update drops.
But don't keep us in suspense.
The wife is pregnant.
Confirm. Yes. Called it. Well, Reddit called it. And Otis.
Exactly. And suddenly, all that weird, confusing behavior from Otis, the clinginess, the crying, even the protective growl.
It all clicks.
It all makes sense now, as the OP said. It wasn't random aggression. It wasn't just separation anxiety. It was this, intense protective instinct kicking in because of the pregnancy.
Wow. But the amazing thing reading through that thread is that Otis isn't some kind of weird outlier, is he?
Not at all. That's what was so fascinating. The comment section just blew up with people sharing incredibly similar stories. It's clearly a thing.
Really? Like other dogs doing the same stuff?
Dogs, cats, you name it. People were talking about German Shepherds, Boston Terriers, tiny Chihuahuas, Lurchers, Mutts, Pit Bull puppies, pugs, even Wolfhound crosses, all sorts of animals.
And cats, too. I always think of cats as being more aloof.
Some are, but apparently not when their human is pregnant. People describe cats who suddenly had to sleep right on the belly or followed them everywhere.
So what kind of behaviors were people seeing? Besides the clinginess.
Well, yeah, increased clinginess was huge, becoming super protective, like Otis. Sleeping right on the chest or stomach was mentioned a lot, following the person constantly, room to room, even changes in their own sleep patterns.
Huh. Any really specific examples that stood out?
Oh yeah, some really memorable ones. One person said they had to breastfeed their baby literally next to the dog bowl because the dog refused to leave the baby's side.
Wow. Dedication.
Another mentioned their usually standoffish cat insisting on sitting directly on the baby belly all the time. And one vet apparently suggested a dog burying treats in the yard might be like instinctive nesting, preparing for a new mouth to feed.
That's incredible. Instincts run deep, huh?
They really do, and it gets even wilder. Someone shared an anecdote about wolf sanctuaries.
Wolf sanctuaries. What about them?
Apparently, they actually warn pregnant visitors. They say the wolves will know you're pregnant and they won't be subtle about it. They'll react.
Whoa. Okay, so wolves, dogs, cats, they can sense this stuff. And it makes you wonder how.
Exactly. And it seems like it's not just pregnancy they can sense. That was another major theme in the comments, pets sensing other health issues too.
Like what kind of things?
All sorts. People shared stories, some anecdotal, some about trained alert dogs, obviously, detecting things like cancer. Cancer.
How?
By smell, usually. Dogs sniffing persistently at a specific spot, or even, one person said, sneezing when smelling a certain area. Also, diabetes dogs alerting to low blood sugar.
Right, I've heard of diabetes alert dogs.
Yeah. And then there were stories about a cat that would sit on someone's chest when they were having heart problems. Pets reacting to changes related to Parkinson's or migraines, often through scent again.
Migraines too, wow.
And just, generally sensing when someone's sick, like they react to a different smell the person gives off. Some described it as almost a metallic smell or like a hot radiator.
So the prevailing theory is it's smell.
Largely, yes, especially for dogs. Their sense of smell is just orders of magnitude beyond ours.
Yeah.
They can pick up on tiny, subtle changes in our body chemistry.
Like hormones.
Hormones, volatile organic compounds, VOCs, things our bodies release that are associated with pregnancy, or shifts in blood sugar, or even the metabolic changes linked to diseases like cancer. Stuff we are completely unaware of.
It's like they have this whole layer of information about us that we can't access ourselves. They're reading signals we don't even know we're sending.
Pretty much, yeah. It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it.
It really is. But, okay, going back to Otis. While the reason he was being protective, the pregnancy is, really sweet, there was another side to this that came up in the comments, right? A more cautious note.
Yes, absolutely. And it's a really important point. While everyone understood why Otis might be acting that way, coming from a place of love and protection.
The actual behavior, the growling, the teeth baring, essentially resource guarding his human that's potentially dangerous.
Exactly. Several commenters, likely people with dog behavior knowledge, raised red flags about safety, especially with a strong breed like a pit bull mix.
What were the specific concerns?
The main worry was that this guarding behavior, if it wasn't addressed with professional training, could easily transfer. He might start guarding the baby from the owners or other family members or visitors.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Or continue guarding the wife from the husband.
Right. The core message was, the intention might be sweet, but the action growling, potential biting is not acceptable and needs serious management for everyone's safety. The babies, the parents, guests, everyone.
It's a good reminder to look at the behavior itself objectively, not just the heartwarming reason behind it.
Definitely. It's a crucial piece of responsible ownership, understanding, and managing those instincts safely.
But stepping away from the practical safety advice for a sec, there was also just this wave of emotion in the comments, wasn't there? People sharing their own deep connections with their pets.
Oh, hugely. Reading through it, you really felt that. So many people talking about their soul dogs or heart dogs.
Yeah, those terms came up a lot.
And just reflecting on that profound bond, how pets teach us things like unconditional love or, make us better humans.
There were little anecdotes too, right? Like pets knowing specific car sounds or...
Yeah. Or cats that apparently wouldn't eat unless their owner ate alongside them. All these little things that speak to this incredible attunement they have to us. That whole who saved who sentiment really resonated.
It's clear that for so many people, this isn't just about owning an animal. It's a much deeper relationship involving levels of perception and connection we're, frankly, probably just scratching the surface of understanding.
Okay, so where does this leave us? What's the takeaway from this whole deep dive?
Well, I think it starts with realizing just how tuned in our pets can be, doesn't it? Sensing physical changes in us, pregnancy, illness, maybe even emotions that we might be totally unaware of ourselves.
Definitely. That sensory world they inhabit is just incredible.
Yeah.
But like we discussed, it also comes with that responsibility.
Right. Understanding their behaviors, even the protective ones that seem sweet, and managing them properly to make sure everyone, including the pet, is safe and comfortable. It's not just about the awe factor.
Precisely. It's that balance between appreciating the amazing bond and instinct and ensuring it manifests safely in our human world.
It really makes you look at your own pets differently, perhaps. Thinking, what subtle cues are they picking up right now? What are their amazing senses telling them about their world, about me, that I have no idea about?
Leaves you wondering, doesn't it? What else do they know? All right, moving on to the next story.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving deep today into a story shared across a series of Reddit posts and updates. It's an 8-year saga, really.
Yeah, an 8-year struggle detailing one father's grueling journey through a high-conflict divorce and a really intense custody battle.
It's a narrative that just lays bare the intense realities of navigating the legal system when you're faced with this relentless, sometimes just bizarre opposition.
Mm-hmm. And the profound impact it has on everyone involved, especially the children.
So our mission in this deep dive is to follow this challenging timeline, right from the initial separation through years of court battles.
Yeah, try to understand the strange nature of the conflict, maybe confront some of those frustrating delays you see in the system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And ultimately witness what turned out to be a truly powerful and positive outcome for the kids at the center of it all, which is quite something after everything.
So this story kicks off around, let's say, 2016. The father, we'll call him OP, newly divorced after 13 years. He had 2 young children, a daughter, Jill, she was 6, and a son, Marvin, 4. He'd also recently remarried a woman named Donna.
Right.
And almost immediately, the conflict with his ex-wife became incredibly intense, like really bordering on harassment.
And when you say harassment, the sources show that it was way beyond just difficult communication, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. We're talking court-ordered online communication tools, having to change phone numbers.
Even moving house, just trying to get some space.
Exactly. And still, the attacks just kept coming.
Wow.
Right. And the nature of these attacks is what's particularly difficult to wrap your head around sometimes.
How so?
Well, it wasn't really rooted in reality. It felt more like fabricating a completely different narrative.
We actually have a stunning example of this right in the source material.
Yeah.
Just days after what Opie described as a completely normal weekend visit, he gets this email from his ex-wife.
Okay.
And reading it, you just have to sort of pause and wonder, what on earth is going on?
Yeah, she writes.
Let's hear it. Jill and Marvin report that they were in a traffic accident with you this weekend, in the truck.
Uh-oh.
They both report that they were bitten by Greg's dog, Murphy, during their visit at your folks' house this weekend. This is the second dog they have both reported biting them. I've also posted their reports that they have been bitten by a large dog named Betsy at your in-laws' house.
Wait, 2 different dogs now?
Yep. And then she finishes, their mild to moderate bruising and scrapes, and the chunks of skin missing from their hands and fingers are consistent with the reports of the accident and the dog bites.
Wow. That's incredibly specific. And disturbing.
But what makes this so shocking is how specific it is, while being, verifiably untrue.
Right. As OP recounted it, the dog Murphy, Couldn't have bitten anyone. Why? He had no teeth.
No teeth. Okay.
And the other dog, Betsy,
Yeah.
she was deceased. Had been for a while.
Oh, come on. Seriously.
Seriously. And there was no accident, no tow truck needed, nothing like that. He said he saw no injuries on the kids beyond maybe a tiny, unrelated scrape.
So it's just building a case out of thin air. Pure fiction.
Pretty much. The level of fabrication is just, bewildering is the word.
And Opie describes his reaction as, pure disbelief, confusion.
Yeah.
Desperately trying to find any little kernel of truth in these wild claims.
I can imagine. The stress must have been immense.
He reveals it was.
Yeah.
This constant barrage led him to the absolute brink. He even considered giving up his parental rights entirely.
Wow. Just to escape the pressure.
Yeah, just to make it stop.
And the comments on his initial post really resonate with that feeling, don't they?
They do. So many people immediately got it. That soul-crushing drain of this kind of daily, just manufactured conflict.
Yeah, and they also quickly zeroed in on the money side of things, noting he'd already spent, around $20,000 on legal fees?
Right, $20K already, and that was early on, which is a significant amount, especially when you're trying to, maintain a home, care for kids.
Absolutely. Commenters highlighted how this fight is just incredibly expensive and how difficult it is to fund these legal battles while also needing to work, provide for your kids, maybe pay support.
It traps people. It
really does. And his post revealed this conflict didn't just impact his relationship with his ex, it spilled over into his new marriage with Donna. He mentioned it was the only thing they ever argued about, shows the immense strain it put on their life together.
Okay, so let's follow the timeline a bit. A few months forward, early 2017, the conflict. It didn't ease up.
No, not really. It just sort of shifted tactics, now focusing more on custody exchanges.
The exchanges, always a flashpoint.
And this phase really highlights the obstructive behavior. Around New Year's, the ex-wife repeatedly failed to pick up the children as agreed.
Repeatedly.
Over just 2 days, there were 4 separate attempts where she made excuses, claiming she was nearby but wasn't, pretending to be sick.
And didn't she provide a doctor's note that actually disproved her claim later?
Exactly. Or demanding he drive long distances completely unexpectedly. Just chaos.
Imagine that stress. OOP describes waiting for hours with Jill and Marvin.
The poor kids.
And how heartbreaking it was seeing them get increasingly anxious and sad, literally crying that their mom had forgotten them again.
Oh, but that's awful.
After hours of waiting, multiple times with no successful exchange, he'd just have to take them back home.
So what was her response to her own failure to pick them up?
Well, she immediately pivoted and accused him of child abduction.
Get out, after she didn't show.
Yep. She even used a phrase, this song and dance has happened before, suggesting this wasn't just a one-off mistake, but a deliberate tactic she used.
Oh, wow. That's manipulative.
And he tried to reach the court-assigned co-parenting mediator during this weekend. Chaos, right? But nothing.
Yeah, apparently unresponsive until after the holiday weekend, which is just a clear example of how the systems designed to help sometimes just aren't there in real-time crises.
Frustrating.
And this wasn't a quick fix situation either. This kind of bizarre behavior and the slow pace of actually addressing it in the system, that became the norm for a long time.
Right. The saga really just grinds on from 2017 into late 2019. There's another instance in July 2017.
Oh, yeah, that one. She's late for the exchange.
Then immediately texts him, accusing him of not even having the kids in his car, even though he sent her a photo showing they were sitting right there.
Total gaslighting. Trying to make him doubt his own reality, what he's seeing with his own eyes.
And she follows it up with this bizarre phone call where she pretends she can't hear him. Hello, hello.
Right, and then texts again, doubling down, accusing him of pretending to pick up our kids, and again, bringing up abduction threats, tying it back to that New Year incident. It's a pattern.
In all this time while this is happening, there's a court-ordered 7:30 psychological evaluation underway.
Yes, but OTP notes that process itself takes about 6 months. So even when the court is trying to get a clearer picture, the wheels are just turning incredibly slowly.
6 months of this kind of conflict continuing.
Exactly. And the most egregious incident documented in this period, maybe just before the legal strategy really shifted, happened in December 2019.
What was that?
She hid the children for 55 hours during his scheduled parenting time.
Hid them. What was her excuse?
Claiming they were snowed in.
Slowed in, but...
But OOP, because he was already in this habit of documenting everything, he checked live traffic cameras, road condition websites. Roads were perfectly clear. No legitimate reason whatsoever for her to withhold the children.
Unbelievable. So what did he do?
His actions during this time really highlight what proved crucial later. Consistent documentation, screenshots, videos, detailed timelines.
Good.
When she hid the kids, he contacted the police. They gave him an incident number, which is important for the record.
Right, documentation.
But basically told him, look, it's a civil matter, take it to court.
Thus, another frustrating hurdle. Even with clear evidence of withholding kids, law enforcement often just punts it back to the civil court system.
Which, as we're seeing, moves at a glacial pace.
Yeah. And we also learn around this time that first 730 evaluation, the one that took 6 months, it was completed earlier that year, April 2019.
And what did it find?
It actually concluded that OOP was the better parent, and his home provided a more stable environment.
Okay. So finally, some progress.
Well, yes and no. Here's where the system's approach feels really contradictory and, frankly, frustrating for someone in his shoes.
How so?
Despite finding him the better parent, the report also suggested the mother might be improving.
Might be.
Yeah, might be improving, and recommended another evaluation in a year if things didn't get better.
So wait, they acknowledge he's the better, more stable parent, but instead of acting on that immediately for the kid's stability...
They decided to wait and see if the parent causing all the chaos might potentially improve down the line.
That seems counterintuitive when kids' well-being is supposedly the priority.
It feels that way reading it. And of course, things didn't improve. The chaos continued.
So he kept documenting everything.
Yep, kept documenting. And a key turning point seemed to be receiving emails directly from the children's teachers.
Ah, objective third parties, that's huge.
Exactly. Noting neglectful conditions, kids apparently not being bathed properly, homework consistently not done, lacking basic school supplies.
Getting that kind of evidence, like emails from teachers, is incredibly powerful in court. It moves way beyond he said, she said.
Right. So this, combined with years of his own detailed documentation, finally gave him the leverage he felt he needed.
So what did he do?
End of 2019, he made the critical decision. Stop just reacting, go on the offensive.
Yeah.
He filed for a trial to formally review custody and seek a swap to become the primary custodial parent.
Okay, taking proactive steps. About time.
That trial was initially set for May 2020, but then...
Let me guess. COVID-19.
Bingo. Hit pause on everything, pushed the trial back even further.
Another delay. Unbelievable. And what happened during that 2020 period? Still conflict.
Oh, yeah. His ex-wife denied visitation to Jill and Marvin for 4 months straight.
4 months. Wow.
He describes having to show up at her house every 2 weeks, as scheduled in the order, waiting, kids obviously not appearing.
Just going through the motions.
And often having to call the police just to get an official incident number. Not to enforce the order then and there, but purely to document the violation for the upcoming trial. Building that undeniable record.
The dedication that takes. The emotional toll.
Immense. Finally, after years of this, the trial happened. Summer of 2021.
Okay, showdown.
Lasted 3 grueling days. And this were all that relentless documentation, all those screenshots, videos, emails, police reports that all came to bear. He presented over 500 pages of evidence.
500 pages? That's thorough.
And the testimony was apparently just as compelling. The co-parenting therapist, who'd worked with him for 5 years.
Okay, that's significant time.
She testified that the ex-wife was the most difficult client she had ever worked with, that she never followed a single agreement, and crucially, called her a pathological liar under oath.
Wow, coming from the therapist involved for years, that carries weight.
You'd think so. The ex-wife was also reportedly caught lying while testifying on the stand.
Oof, not good.
And they presented evidence that she'd been secretly taking the children to some unscreened medical professional for 2 years without OOP's knowledge or agreement.
Another violation of likely court orders or agreements, right?
Unbelievably. So all of that evidence, all that testimony, after 8 long years of fighting, it culminated in the judge's order in August 2021.
And the decision.
Primary custody was awarded to the father. Finally, the ex-wife's time was limited to just 4 days a month.
8 years later, wow, a huge shift.
And this is where the story takes that dramatic, incredible positive turn we mentioned earlier. Over the past 3 years, since that order in August 2021, the transformation in the children's lives is just absolutely remarkable.
It's genuinely inspiring when you read about it, isn't it? The impact of just stability.
Totally. Jill, remember, she was struggling badly, like 26% in math, 40% in English back in 5th grade. Now she's in high school with a 4.0 GPA, taking advanced classes like honors geometry, AP biology.
That's incredible. What a turnaround. And Marvin.
He finished middle school with a 4.0 too. Yeah. Thriving, interested in coding, robotics.
Fantastic. Just shows what they're capable of in the right environment.
And it's not just academics either, right? The sources detail this broader positive shift.
Yeah, like having new clothes that actually fit, learning new skills, taking on responsibilities.
Their rooms are immaculate, apparently, and they maintain them themselves.
That's great. Involved in activities, sports, and just seem happy, well-adjusted kids.
And it sounds like their stepmother, Donna, played a really vital role in this transformation.
Absolutely. Providing that consistent presence, help with homework, the routines that were so desperately missing before.
They've also formed a close bond with their younger half-sibling, Rebecca. He mentions often finding the three of them just cuddled up, reading books together.
Ah, that's lovely. A picture of a stable, loving family unit finally emerging.
Yeah. But there are still some lingering effects of the past, though. It's not all completely erased.
Understandable. What's happening there?
Well, Jill, she's older now, recently made the difficult but, empowered decision to stop visits with her mother.
Really? Why?
Citing the continued chaos and drama, lack of food, clothes that fit, etc., just ongoing issues during the visits.
So the behavior didn't completely stop, even with limited time.
Right.
Okay. And Marvin?
He's still choosing to visit, for now. And OOP is supporting his decision, as long as he feels safe doing so.
That sounds like a balanced approach, letting the kids have some agency now they're older.
Yeah. And in his reflections, OP doesn't just attribute the success to himself, which is interesting.
What does he point to?
He points to the kids finally having support with homework and a routine to follow every day. He believes this consistency allowed them to start believing in themselves and then setting their own lofty goals.
That makes a lot of sense. Structure and belief.
He even shares their aspirations. Jill wants to be an investigative journalist. Marvin, a nuclear engineer.
Wow. Those are powerful ambitions for kids who, just a few years ago, were dealing with the anxiety of being forgotten at exchanges and living amidst such chaos.
Right. And OOP also expressed deep gratitude for the advice he got along the way, from Reddit, from lawyers, acknowledging how hard it is to see clearly and make the right moves when you are in the thick of it.
Oh, absolutely. It's easy to get lost in the fog of that kind of conflict.
So, stepping back from this whole 8-year journey, what are the key takeaways? What actually worked here?
Well, number one has to be consistent, meticulous documentation. That was critical.
Definitely. Also, implementing strategies like gray rock, minimizing emotional reactions to the ex's provocations.
Right, making the interactions less rewarding for her, and just sheer stubborn perseverance through a system that moves incredibly slowly. He just didn't quit.
But as so many commenters highlighted, this story, while ultimately successful, it also exposes some pretty significant flaws in the system, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The financial cost, for one. Commenters estimated it was well into the 6 figures over 8 years.
6 figures. That's a massive barrier. This path to justice, to getting kids into a stable home, it's just not accessible to most people facing similar situations.
Oh, wait, it requires immense resources. And looking at the ex-wife's behavior, the bizarre accusations, the gaslighting, withholding the kids the comments section, understandably, had a lot of speculation about underlying issues.
Yeah, based solely on the patterns described in the post. People wondered about things like personality disorders, mental illness, or maybe just being a high-conflict individual, identifying patterns they saw as coercive control, gaslighting.
And it's important, like you said, to remember this is speculation from observers reacting to the story he told.
Right.
But it reflects just how extreme and concerning her documented actions were perceived to be by others reading it.
There was also significant shared criticism from commenters just aimed at the legal system itself. Words like unacceptable, infuriating, people questioning its effectiveness.
Yeah, commenters specifically questioned that initial approach by the first 7 and 30 evaluator and the court. Why prioritize waiting to see if the mother might improve?
Over the immediate, documented need for stability for the children, especially considering the critical formative years lost during all those delays, the legal process, illness, COVID.
Exactly. It seemed backwards to many. There was also discussion in the comments about gender bias in custody cases.
Oh, yeah. Differing views there.
Yeah, different viewpoints presented on whether courts inherently favor mothers or if successful fathers like OOP actually face even steeper uphill battles to prove their case.
But regardless of the specifics of bias, the shared frustration was clear. It's incredibly difficult and takes way too long for any parent to remove children from a situation of significant conflict and harm if the other parent is actively obstructing the process through the legal system.
And even with this overwhelmingly positive resolution for the kids now, the sources and comments remind us that those years of trauma don't just magically disappear.
Right. Several commenters pointed out that therapy would likely be necessary for the children to process everything they went through.
Yeah, the years of conflict, the uncertainty, the specific incidents like being hidden or forgotten, acknowledging the potential long-term impact on their emotional well-being as they grow into adults.
Definitely something to keep in mind. Ultimately, though, this story is just a powerful testament to the father's perseverance, isn't it?
Absolutely. As one commenter put it, he did not give up and fought for them for years.
And it really underscores the vital role of a supportive partner like Donna, providing that foundation of stability, both for him to keep fighting and, crucially, for the kids to finally have that secure environment they needed to heal and thrive.
Couldn't have done it alone, likely.
So this deep dive into one family's exhausting years-long battle, it offers a lot to consider. It's, on one hand, a powerful example of how incredibly resilient children can be, when, after years of chaos, they are finally given that stable, supportive, loving environment. Look how they blossomed.
It's amazing. But it also forces us to ask some really difficult questions about the systems that are supposed to protect those children, right?
Yeah. Why is the path to safety and stability, even in cases of pretty clear harm, so agonizingly slow? So dependent on a parent having immense financial resources.
And ultimately relying on one individual's sheer endurance to navigate years of legal battles and emotional warfare. It shouldn't be that hard.
It really leaves you wondering, what changes could make these systems faster, more equitable, and genuinely prioritize the immediate well-being and need for stability for kids caught in these high-conflict situations?
Instead of getting so bogged down in the parental conflict itself or pinning hopes on the faint possibility of a volatile parent, maybe improving sometime way down the road.
Exactly. Something for all of us to think about.
All right, moving on to the next story. You've sent us some truly wild material for this deep dive. A story that somehow wraps together relationships, self-deception, the internet, and some of the most bizarre linguistic frameworks we've ever encountered.
Yeah, it's really something else.
At the heart of it is a Reddit post describing a situation where a wife is pitched on the concept of a, wait for it, gaycation.
A gaycation.
So, our mission here is to unpack this concept as it's presented in the material you shared, the idea itself, the explosive reactions it triggered, and the potential underlying factors that the original poster and the commenters wrestled with.
And we've got a lot of angles from the source material, right? The wife's shock, the husband's justifications.
Exactly. Family drama and a heap of online commentary trying to make sense of it all.
What's really fascinating here, I think, is how quickly a seemingly simple, though, disturbing premise presented in the post spins out.
Spins out how?
Into discussions about shared delusions, internalized issues, and these strange online communities that commenters started pointing towards.
Absolutely. And we're going to delve into the specific, almost cult-like language used, the bizarre rationalizations, and the dramatic fallout that, according to the post and its updates, left multiple lives, in upheaval.
Yeah, completely turned upside down.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Where do we start? The original post.
Yeah, the story, as recounted in the original post, begins with a woman, 42F, married for 16 years, 2 sons, 15 and 10.
Sounds pretty normal initially.
Right. Describes a seemingly happy marriage until this one particular Sunday afternoon.
Okay. And that's when, she explains, her husband, 42M, sat her down and unveiled this concept.
Yeah. He pulls out what she describes as a printed flyer or poster, maybe for some kind of orgy, and launches into explaining what he calls a gaycation.
And his definition is key here, isn't it?
Totally. The way he defines it, according to the post, is where straight men go somewhere with sun, sand, and booze and become gay for the trip's duration.
Just for the duration.
Right. And he stresses the central rule from his perspective. What happens on the gaycation stays on the gaycation.
Therefore,
it doesn't count.
Exactly. According to his logic, it doesn't actually count.
Wow.
His specific plan. He wants to go to Ibiza with his brother-in-law, who's 35.
And the wife's reaction.
She describes herself as stunned, mortified, Just silent, understandably.
And the husband, he insists he's straight.
Completely. The post states he was adamant he isn't gay or bi, claiming to be 100% attracted to women, but insisting he has this need to experience this.
A need. Okay.
And this is where the analogies shared in the post are getting truly, truly weird.
Oh, yeah, the aquarium one.
That's the one.
Yeah.
He compares it to going to an aquarium. You observe the fish, get up close, but you never actually enter the water, which he equates to getting emotionally invested.
Right.
Or become a fish, which he equates to actually becoming gay.
So his logic is, if you don't become a fish, it doesn't count.
Precisely. In his mind, it doesn't really count. As the wife recounts, this analogy just didn't land, made no sense to her.
And he apparently got more huffy, insisting she just don't get it.
So her initial verbal reaction, when she got past the shock,
was to try and understand, asking directly, are you gay? Are you bi? Makes sense.
Yeah.
But the post describes him getting very defensive, telling her to drop the accusations because, again, this is the beauty of the gaycation.
The beauty, right.
She then delivered an ultimatum, she writes. If he goes, the marriage is over.
Pretty clear line in the sand.
Totally. But what's wild is the husband's reaction to this, as the original poster describes it.
What happened?
He genuinely seemed torn up by the decision not to go. He even missed work, she said, looking really distraught.
Huh. That immediate reaction is fascinating, isn't it? Is it really about missing the trip itself?
Or something else.
Or is he distraught because he's being forced to confront something deeper, about his own sexuality or desires, but without this elaborate justification framework he built?
That's what a lot of the commenters seem to think, right? That it was hitting something internal.
Yeah, based on the comments in the source material, many readers definitely lean towards that latter explanation. The framework was collapsing.
And things escalated dramatically after she actually told him to leave the house.
How so?
The wife describes him having a childish tantrum, literally screaming about how she doesn't understand the gaycation.
Doesn't understand.
And accusing her of being homophobic because she wouldn't allow this cultural exchange with the gay community.
Wow. Framing potential cheating as some kind of noble act of cultural exploration. That really highlights the level of detachment from reality described in the post.
It's pretty stunning. And then she brilliantly turns his own logic against him.
Oh, this is the Manchester part.
Yes. She asks if it would be okay for her to go to Manchester for a week and sleep with other men, using his exact phrases back at him.
Like?
Doesn't mean anything, doesn't count. Like bird watching.
Oof. How did he react to that?
The post says, this finally seemed to get through to him. He went quiet, actually started crying.
Crying.
And admitted the thought of her with another man was destroying his heart.
So he does understand the implications.
You'd think. But then, in a truly twisted moment, she describes, he then agreed she could have a Manchester week if he went on the gaycation.
Wait, what? Why?
Because, he said, relationships need sacrifices, and it was fair in a twisted way.
Oh my God. Sacrifices? Fair.
I know.
This exchange, as so many commenters noted, really seems to confirm that he understands exactly what he's proposing. It's cheating when the roles are reversed.
Seems pretty clear.
The gaycation is just the narrative, the story he's constructed to make it acceptable for him. It's a fascinating insight into the self-deception aspect woven through this whole story.
Absolutely. So after that incredibly bizarre argument, the wife tells him to leave, which she does.
And she takes action.
Immediately. The post mentions she legally drained their joint bank account, noting this is okay in the UK, where the story seems set and changed the locks.
Smart moves. And then the situation expands,
Yeah.
right? Beyond just them.
Yeah, the updates provided show the family getting involved quickly.
Who gets involved first?
First, the mother-in-law calls. Initially, she's screaming accusations at the wife.
Oh, dear.
But then, after talking to her son, she calls back, this time in tears and apologetic.
So she heard the story from him and changed her tune.
Apparently so. Then the father-in-law gets on the phone.
And his reaction.
He sounds calm, the wife writes, but is on the warpath. He's very apologetic to the original poster.
Okay.
And confirms the husband gave him the exact same spiel.
The same justification.
Word for word, seemingly. It's a modern thing men do, how they cannot resist, how they must surrender.
Must surrender. That's quite the phrasing.
Isn't it? According to the update, the FIL told the husband to leave their house, where he'd apparently gone, or he'd call the police, confirmed they have her corner.
Wow. So even his own parents were taken aback by this whole explanation.
Seems like it. And the husband's response to this family intervention? shared in a text message, she mentions.
Let me guess. More justifications.
Described as weirdly rambly, accusing his wife and his parents of using the gaycation concept to destroy his marriage and destroy his life.
Blaming them, of course.
And doubling down again on the homophobia accusations.
Unbelievable.
But here's where the story gets even stranger, and it directly links the two men, the husband and the BIL.
Okay, what happens?
The wife talks to the sister-in-law, the BIL's wife.
Yeah.
The cis-IL puts the phone on speaker so the original poster can listen in on a conversation happening with the BIL.
Oh, interesting. Eavesdropping, essentially.
Yeah. And the BIL, according to this shared account, gives his wife the identical Gaycation script.
No way. The exact same points.
The same points about it not counting because there's no investment. Using another bizarre analogy, this one, about writing down angry thoughts and putting them in a drawer and never having to see them again.
That is strikingly consistent.
Right. The consistency of the language used by both men is something the commenters immediately picked up on.
Yeah, I bet. It strongly suggests a shared source or, some kind of belief system they both adopted. Many readers commented it sounded almost cultish.
Definitely has that vibe. And as the discussion with the BIL unfolds, overheard on speakerphone, it gets into even darker territory.
Darker how?
It's described as shifting towards talk of sissy hypnoporn.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The BIL, the sissy reports, starts conflating this with the gaycation concept. He talks about hypnosis, mind control,
Seriously.
and being totally feminized into permanent pseudo-gayness.
Permanent pseudo-gayness. What does that even mean?
Who knows? But in an utterly surreal detail from the account, the BIL insists that even engaging in specific sexual acts willingly, because you want to, still doesn't make you gay. Because that's the beauty of the gaycation. It allows you to avoid the wider gay life experience.
So it's like a loophole for identity.
That seems to be the pitch. And he claims, his wife relays this, that most men do this annually.
Most men.
Some go on the gaycation for years and others, quote, simply never return.
Never return. What does that imply?
It's chilling, right? He insists this is something all straight men do, but women wouldn't get it.
That classic women wouldn't understand line.
Okay.
And the SIL's reaction to all this.
Tears, we learn. She gives him the same choice. He leaves, or she does.
And
he leaves, but get this. Still insisting she doesn't need to choose because the gaycation allows him to keep his marriage as it doesn't count.
That sentence right there.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to make this choice because the beauty of the gaycation is that it allows him to keep his marriage because it doesn't count. That was highlighted by commenters as just particularly chilling.
Yeah. It shows how little they seem to value their wife's feelings or agency,
Yeah.
It just ties right back into that theme of self-deception, completely overlighting reality. Absolutely. Now, let's turn to the comments section of the post itself, because this story, unsurprisingly, provoked a huge reaction and a lot of analysis from other readers, which you included in the sources.
Right. People really try to make sense of this. And reacting to the story, they offered several potential explanations for this, frankly, bizarre behavior.
What were the main theories?
Well, one major theme was viewing this simply as cheating under a delusion, plain and simple. Many commenters described it as like magical thinking used to justify infidelity.
And the wife's Manchester week idea really cemented that for people, didn't it?
Exactly. That proposal, confirming he knew it was cheating when the roles were reversed, was frequently cited as evidence. He got it then.
Okay, what else came up?
Another perspective that came up often was exploring sexuality and internalized homophobia.
How so?
Commenters suggested these men might be battling with deeply internalized homophobia, that strange surrender or be destroyed language the FEL mentioned.
Yeah, that was weird.
Some saw that as reflecting internal conflict around their own desires. And some noted this kind of behavior isn't entirely unheard of among men who have sex with men, but strongly resist identifying as gay or bi.
So the gaycation framework becomes a way to rationalize the behavior without changing their self-identity.
That was the theory, yeah. A way to compartmentalize. And this often tied into a really prevalent idea in the comments that this was the product of an online community or cultish behavior.
Because of the identical script.
Exactly. The shared delusion, the identical script, the bizarre language, the insistence that women wouldn't get it. It strongly suggested to many readers that they were operating within some kind of online echo chamber.
An echo chamber that had warped their thinking and was completely divorced from reality, as one commenter put it.
Yeah, commenters repeatedly used phrases like cult alarms ringing because of the rigid shared belief system and how defensive they were.
And the sissy hypno-porn connection, where did that lead commenters?
That led commenters to pointing to this as possibly a specific kink or fetish taken to an extreme. Some use the term sexual dissonance.
And didn't something else come up about an earlier incident?
Yes, the detail about the other SIL's husband being approached by this same pair, the husband and BIL, about some kind of BDSM cross-dressing online boot camp 2 years prior.
2 years. Okay.
That really reinforced the idea for commenters that this wasn't some sudden whim, and it likely originated online within a very specific subculture.
Right. Makes sense.
And then some commenters even speculated on a potential existing relationship between the husband and the BIL themselves.
Suggesting the Gaycation was maybe just a cover story for something already happening between them?
That was floated, yeah, though the post itself doesn't confirm or deny that. Just speculation based on the intensity and the shared narrative.
Gotcha. And we absolutely have to mention the South Park comparison.
Oh, definitely. So many comments compared the whole situation to the absurdity of South Park, specifically referencing Randy Marsh and the whole gay fish thing.
The sheer outlandishness of the Gaycation script clearly resonated with that particular brand of satire for many, many readers. It just felt that absurd.
It really did. It's also worth noting, though, that some commenters pointed out that the term Gaycation does exist in the real world.
Oh, really? How so?
Often used by actual queer people to describe traveling safely within their own community or, going to celebrate pride events, which just highlights how the term was being completely twisted and distorted in this story's context.
Right, taking a real term and warping its meaning.
Exactly. And the material also mentions that other commenters had seen similar bizarre stories pop up on Reddit before.
Like other Gaycation posts.
Yeah, including previous posts using the term Gaycation in a similarly distorted context. It suggests this particular narrative, or variations of it, might crop up periodically online in certain corners.
Interesting. A recurring theme, maybe?
Possibly. And while, a few commenters did express some skepticism about the reality of the story itself, citing maybe some inconsistencies.
Which happens with online stories.
Of course. But this deep dive is based entirely on the content provided in the original source material and its comments that you shared with us. We're analyzing the story as told.
Right. So the post updates describe the immediate consequences of this whole bizarre reveal.
Yeah, and they were swift and severe, according to the updates. 2 marriages just ended abruptly. And family relationships became significantly strained, obviously the SIL with her husband, but also the original husband with his own parents, who clearly didn't buy his story.
And the wives, what do they do next?
They took immediate action, described right there in the updates, changing locks, draining those joint bank accounts we mentioned, and planning to pursue divorce, specifically citing adultery.
Makes sense.
The original poster also touches on the emotional toll, which must have been immense, describing her and her SIL's lives destroyed in such an abrupt, bizarre, embarrassing way.
Just completely blindsided by this absurdity.
Totally. As for next steps, the original poster mentioned planning to check devices and bank statements, looking for concrete proof of cheating, and trying to figure out how on earth to tell her children about all this.
Yeah, that's the heartbreaking part, isn't it?
It really is. What's particularly striking, I think, is how quickly this whole fantasy structure, this Gaycation framework, just collapsed when it met reality.
When confronted with real boundaries.
Exactly. Boundaries from their wives, even from the husband's parents. It just highlights the fragility of these self-made rules and how completely disconnected they were from the actual reality of their relationships.
So to recap this truly strange deep dive into your source material, we've seen this concept of a Gaycation presented, well, not as genuine exploration, it seems.
Not really, no.
But seemingly as this elaborate tool for self-deception or maybe justification for behavior that would otherwise just be called cheating, all based on how the post describes it, of course.
Yeah, and the identical language, those bizarre defenses used by both the husband and the BIL, really strongly suggest a shared source or maybe a shared delusion.
Probably fueled by specific online communities, as so many commenters speculated.
It seems likely. It's a powerful example, really, of how shared fantasies, no matter how bizarre they might seem from the outside, can take hold especially online.
And the fallout, as described in the updates, was dramatic and immediate. It just demonstrates how deeply this shared fantasy was divorced from the reality of their relationships and the feelings of the people around them.
This story, as told in the sources you provided, really serves as a vivid, if disturbing, example. It shows how deeply internalized issues, perhaps particularly around sexuality or maybe just immersion in certain online echo chambers, can warp perception. It can lead people to construct these elaborate justifications that completely disregard the impact of their actions on others, on the people they supposedly care about.
It really makes you think, based purely on what's in this material. What does it tell us about that human desire to compartmentalize behavior, to create these internal rules that let us dismiss reality or, the feelings of those closest to us?
That's a great question. And maybe also, what happens when a shared fantasy, no matter how out there it is, becomes more important than the tangible reality of long-term relationships and family connections? Where does that lead?
Definitely something to mull over. Thanks for sharing this fascinating, if deeply strange, source material with us for this deep dive. All right, moving on to the next story. We've got these two Reddit posts, basically. One from a 31-year-old guy about an interaction at a restaurant.
Or a bar and grill, yeah.
Right, a bar and grill. And then a follow-up from one of the young women who was actually there telling her side. It's quite a contrast.
Yeah, and on top of that, we have all the reactions, the comments from other people online weighing in on both stories. It's this whole ecosystem of perspectives.
Exactly. So our mission today is to kind of navigate these two, conflicting accounts and all the commentary around them. We're just using the material you gave us.
We want to unpack the different viewpoints, figure out what's going on with the social dynamics, things like perception, maybe entitlement, setting boundaries.
All seen through how this online community processed it. It's a deep dive into how communication breaks down.
Okay, let's get into it. We start with the first post from the man, the original poster, or OOP. He's 31. Just out of a long relationship.
Right, and he's out with his friend at what he calls a cool restaurant bar downtown.
And he sees this group of young women celebrating a birthday, a 19th birthday.
He says he found the birthday girl attractive, her friends too, and wanted to chat her up.
But even his friend was hesitant. The source says the friend called them babies.
Yeah, a bit of foreshadowing there, maybe. But the friend still goes along as his wingman.
So OOP goes over, wishes her happy birthday, and in his telling, things seem okay at first. He mentions they were laughing.
And that laughter becomes a real point of contention later. He took it as a good sign.
But then, according to him, things shift dramatically. One of the women apparently snaps at him, says something like, "Take a fucking hint, R. Kelly."
Whoa, yeah. And another one asks them to please go away, saying they're making them uncomfortable.
Now, this is where his focus really lands. He says he was taken aback, really bothered by that R. Kelly comment.
He defends himself in the post, saying, "It's fucked up to call me a predator when we are all adults here." That's his key point.
And here's a crucial part of his story. They ask him to leave, but he says he stood his ground.
Stood his ground, okay.
Yeah. He says the birthday woman, and notice he calls her a woman here, not a girl anymore, argued back. Said it didn't matter if they were legal adults, it was still weird for someone my age to hit on them.
And that they'd made their discomfort obvious.
Right. And then, according to him, she makes another R. Kelly reference, asking if she looked like Aaliyah to him.
Wow. Okay, so tensions are high.
He says he did apologize for making them uncomfortable, but he doubled down, insisting they had no right to call him a predator just for talking to them.
So he apologized, but then kept arguing.
Seems like it. He stayed even after being asked to leave again. He mentions one woman called his persistence a personal problem. Another just yelled at him to go away.
And the final straw for him, the thing that made him pissed off and seething,
was, as he was finally leaving, he says their table started singing Remix to Ignition, the R. Kelly song, and laughing. He felt furious and humiliated.
And what about his friend in all this?
Well, according to OP, the friend blamed him, called him delusional.
The friend thought the initial laughter wasn't genuine.
Exactly. The friend apparently said it was uncomfortable laughter.
Okay, so even his wingman saw it differently.
But OB felt really strongly that he was wronged by the predator comment, especially since they were all 18, 19. He thought his friend should have backed him up on that.
He ends his post asking, was he wrong? He insists he was being respectful and not creepy at all.
He did add some edits later, saying he let his pride get in the way and he'll do better. But the core of his post is still defending his actions and his anger about the accusation.
Right. So that's narrative number one.
Okay, now let's completely flip the script. We turn to the post from one of the young women at that table who actually found his Reddit post. Her account paints a very different scene.
Yeah, it really does. First off, the setting. She clarifies it's mainly a restaurant, a bar and grill, not really a pickup spot. She mentions a family sitting nearby. They were just minding our business.
She confirms he came over, wished happy birthday. She says they appreciated that part, but then the crucial difference, he stuck around.
This is where the stories just diverge completely.
Yeah.
She describes their experience as actively trying to signal they weren't interested.
How? Like, what did they do?
She lists things like laughing uncomfortably, pointedly turning back to their own conversation, just nodding, turning their back slightly, even saying thank you, bye, multiple times.
Okay, so trying the polite dismissal route.
Exactly. And she adds her friend kept making excuses to get up and leave the booth, trying to underscore the awkwardness.
And despite all that,
Here's the bombshell detail completely absent from his story. She says she offered him a piece of cake, like, here's some cake, please leave now kind of gesture.
Right, a classic, polite, get-lost move.
And he apparently grabbed the cake and then sat down in our booth.
Oh, wow. He actually sat down with them.
Yes. And said, the night's not over yet, according to her account.
That changes everything. That's not just misreading signals. That's actively ignoring them and invading their space.
Precisely. And regarding the R. Kelly comment, she explains it wasn't meant literally as you are a pedophile, but as you are being a creep.
A way to escalate because the hints weren't working.
Exactly. She's very direct in her post. 30-year-old guys who hit on us are creepy and disgust us, point blank, period.
She maintains they were nice the entire time. Before that comment, gave a million hints and cake for the road.
And what really seemed to get to her was his reaction after they were direct. She talks about his audacity to stand there and fight us on it.
So she confirms they explicitly told him he was way too old, and it felt creepy from the start, and instead of leaving, he argued.
That's her account, that the argument happened after they were direct about his age and the creepiness.
And the singing. The ignition song.
She says that happened among ourselves after he'd finally left. It was them trying to, laugh off a ruined birthday moment, turn it into an inside joke, not something they did at him as he walked away.
Okay, that context matters too. And his defense about them being legal adults.
She calls that demeaning and sickening. She describes him asking their ages right after stating his own, making it feel like he was eyeing us at a family restaurant.
Like he was checking if they were technically fair game.
That's the implication she felt. She ends her post saying she's just tired of having to be polite to guys who are creepy and disrespectful. It's this feeling of exhaustion.
Right, that emotional labor piece. So, okay, two incredibly different stories about the same few minutes. But it doesn't end there, does it? Because we have the comments.
Right, the peanut gallery weighs in, and the sources you provided show the commentary was, well, pretty one-sided.
Overwhelmingly critical of the OOP, siding with the young women.
Definitely. Lots of people jumped on the setting, echoing the young woman. Sir, this is an Applebee's, basically saying it wasn't the time or place.
The consensus seemed to be that he was the asshole, specifically for being creepy, not taking a hint, and arguing about it.
People flagged it as typical nice guy behavior. That sense of entitlement, he thought he was being nice, so he expected positive attention and got angry when he didn't.
And the fact his own friend called him delusional, commenters pointed to that constantly.
Yeah, even your own buddy saw it. It made OOP seem like an unreliable narrator of his own story.
The entitlement theme just runs through the comments. People saying he felt entitled to their attention, their time, their space.
And entitled to them being polite, even when they were clearly uncomfortable. That emotional labor point again.
Did people notice his language shift from girls to women?
Oh, yeah. Many commenters saw that as a deliberate tactic. He called them girls when describing hitting on them, but women when defending himself based on their age.
And the whole it's legal defense, how'd that go down?
Terribly. Universally panned in the comments. People called it the bare minimum defense, completely missing the point about social appropriateness and comfort.
It's not about what's legal, it's about what's respectful.
Exactly. Commenters drew analogies like, well, beef is legal, doesn't mean you serve it at a vegan dinner party. Or, surgery is legal, doesn't mean you perform it without consent. It highlights how absurd the legality argument is in a social context.
Some commenters felt it implied he would go younger if it weren't illegal.
That definitely came up. The feeling was that focusing on legality suggests the only boundary recognized is the law, not social cues or comfort.
And then there were the personal stories people shared.
So many. That was really striking. Women sharing their own experiences of older men hitting on them, often starting when they were teens, sometimes even younger.
In all sorts of everyday places, work, school, just walking down the street, on the bus.
It really contextualized the young women's reaction. This wasn't just one awkward encounter for them. It taps into this ongoing, pervasive experience for many women.
Someone used that tiger in the bush analogy.
Yeah, that was powerful. The idea that women often have this background level of vigilance, this need to constantly assess situations and manage unwanted attention in a way many men just don't experience.
And that leads to the discussion about exhaustion, right?
Yeah.
Having to constantly manage this, and why sometimes politeness fails and you just have to be blunt, even if it means being called mean.
Right, because the hints are so often ignored, as they apparently were here.
What about the age gap itself? The 31 versus 18-19.
Commenters found it inherently creepy, especially because he initiated and then ignored boundaries. There was speculation that the age gap, the inexperience, might have been part of the appeal for him, consciously or not. Like maybe he thought they'd be easier to impress or manipulate.
So less genuine cluelessness and more self-absorption or entitlement driven by his own stuff, like being newly single.
That's what many commenters suggested, that his behavior stemmed from his own needs and perspective, rather than an inability to read social cues. He saw them when he wanted something.
Any comments about the friend?
Yeah, mixed feelings. People acknowledged the friend saw the problem, but some felt maybe he should have stepped in more forcefully, pulled his buddy away sooner, instead of just being a reluctant wingman.
Okay, wow. So pulling all these threads together from the OOP's post, the woman's response, and all that commentary, what are the big takeaways here?
Well, number one is just the incredibly stark difference in perception. Same event, two completely different realities experienced. His reality of being polite and unfairly attacked versus their reality of being harassed by an older guy who wouldn't take no for an answer.
It really hammers home how vital it is to actually read social cues and respect boundaries, both the subtle ones and the explicit ones.
Absolutely. When someone signals disinterest or outright says, "Leave me alone," that's it. End of interaction. No arguing, no standing your ground.
And the whole debate around legality versus social acceptability is key. Just because something isn't illegal doesn't make it okay or welcome or not creepy.
Right. Social contracts, respect, comfort, those operate on a different level than the law, and the comments really drove that home.
And finally, I think the sheer volumes of shared experiences in the comments really highlights how common this kind of unwanted attention is, particularly for young women from older men, and the constant effort it takes to navigate.
Yeah, that emotional labor is a significant burden that came through loud and clear.
It's just so clear from all this source material how intent and impact can be miles apart, especially when you factor in age differences, gender dynamics, perceived power.
Exactly. What he intended doesn't erase how his actions were perceived and experienced by them.
This whole situation and the huge reaction online, it's a really powerful lens on persistent unwanted attention and maybe the different social world men and women can sometimes live in.
So maybe a final thought to leave you with, drawing from all this. How often do we get caught up in our own intentions, our own feelings, and maybe fail to see or acknowledge the discomfort we might be causing someone else? What's our responsibility really to not just mean well, but to actively read the room and respect boundaries, especially when someone is telling us clearly that we're crossing them? Thanks for joining us for this deep dive today. We hope it gave you plenty to consider.